think we need to talk about it more because I don't think we give any leeway for people who are grieving to function less.
Yeah.
And we should be giving months and months of just kindness and grace and holding space. The only thing I can say is that it does eventually get better, but it takes so long.
Welcome to Legal Off The Leash, the podcast where we take the legal profession out of the box and into a happier, more fulfilling future.
We're your hosts, Scott Simmons and Elizabeth de Stadler. And today we've got Bridget McNulty.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Okay, so the reason why Bridget is on is the other day I saw a book called Daily Glimmers, The Art of Finding Tiny Joys Every Day of the Year. And I thought, I must have this book. Except that there's a moratorium on buying books in my house at the moment. So I thought, if I invited her onto the podcast, she might give me a copy.
It's a terrific method of getting new books.
Yeah.
You start the podcast just to get books. It's a good reason to start a podcast.
Okay, I'm going to read your bio from the book. So you're a writer, a diabetes advocate, and the co-founder of Sweet Life, which is South Africa's largest online diabetes community. You live in Cape Town,
Yes.
in South Africa, with your husband, son, and daughter, and loves nothing more than a cup of tea and a good book, preferably somewhere green and leafy. See, we have a lot in common.
Very true. I always love it when people have like fancy bios where they list all their achievements. And then someone says, can you send me your bio? And I send them that one. And they're like, okay, thanks. Very nice.
In mine, I disclose that I am mortally afraid of moths and also butterflies, because butterflies are just moths in drag.
They are. Much prettier though. Love me a butterfly. I'll make sure not to mention any glimmers involving butterflies.
No. Scott, what's the strangest thing about you that you would put in a bio? Because I know strange things about you that I wouldn't put in a bio.
No, because again, we can always edit that one out. What's the strangest thing about me? I don't know.
The sweetest thing about you.
The sweetest thing about me is what I have to put up with Elizabeth and stay smiling.
Yes. I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah.
What if that fits in a bio though?
No, but
No,
I'd
I
make
think
it
you
work.
would.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get stuck in. So can you tell us a bit more about your backstory? I mean, everything that led up to the books, and we'll talk about both.
I am the least educated member of my family, which is a surprise to everyone, but mostly a surprise to me because I was like a golden child growing up. I studied in the States at Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Amish country. And I decided to go to America because I wanted to be a movie star because I love acting. And then I realized that in order to be a movie star, you have to be around people all the time. And I don't love being around people all the time. So then I switched to writing and got a creative writing degree. I came back to South Africa pretty much as soon as I graduated. I realized how South African I was after I left and moved back to Durban, my hometown, and wrote my first novel when I was 25, which is adorable. It's called Strange Nervous Laughter, and it's about 6 characters whose lives all intertwine in the hottest summer Durban has ever known. Very odd. It's magical realism, but it's like very weird magical realism. And it's an adorable little time portal to what I was like at 25. And I was very sweet.
Do you
And
still
then at
like
the same
it?
time, I love it. I read it last year and I was like, this is terrific. It's very strange. There's an undertaker who paints dead people's toenails. And I'm like, oh, where did that come from? Floats when she's happy. One of them can talk to whales. It's charming. And then I moved to Cape Town when my book was published. And a month after it was published, I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and was doing a lot of
That
writing
sucks.
around that. It wasn't great. I think 25 is an easier age to be diagnosed though. And then my husband and I decided that we'd always wanted to travel. So we went on a 6-month trip around Southeast Asia and South America to show that it was possible to still travel with diabetes. And that's what started Sweet Life, which is the diabetes nonprofit that I now run. We are South Africa's largest online diabetes community, and we focus on education and community empowerment. And then my mom died 6 years ago, very suddenly, 13 days from when she was diagnosed to when she died. And I'm a writer and a reader, and so I looked for a book that could help. Because like I have 2 young kids and there are 100 books about parenting, so I thought there would be a similar number of books about grieving, and they just weren't. They were like very philosophical, dense texts that I didn't feel like I could get into, and they were religious texts, which wasn't what I was looking for. And then there were blank journals, and I wanted something kind and empathetic and easy to digest because my brain was so foggy, and I couldn't find it. And so I wrote it, and that was The Grief Handbook, A Guide Through the Worst Days of Your Life. And funnily enough, in that book, there's a section right at the end about slices of joy, which are like tiny micro moments that make you feel a little bit better, aka glimmers. There's the spoiler alert. And the book was about grief, but people kept asking me about slices of joy. And so I realized there was something in there that I should explore, and something that people kind of had an appetite for, and that our daily lives need, I think. And so this book is Daily Glimmers, The Art of Finding Tiny Joys Every Day of the Year. And it feels like the other side of the coin to the grief book. I think for those who've been through grief and joy are weirdly aligned.
So where to start, really? Because like you say, grief and joy, there's so much about them and alignment. We start with joy. Or maybe we should start with grief and then pick everyone up afterwards. Or maybe we should start with joy, start on the high, and then come down, and then we'll find a way back up afterwards.
Well, first I want to have the rare moment of intellectual humility.
Ooh.
God will tell you that never happens.
Never.
But what do you mean when you say that they are sort of woven together?
So I had assumed, getting diagnosed with diabetes was hectic. I was 3 days away from a coma. I was desperately ill. But aside from that, nothing terrible had ever really happened to me. And then my mom died, and she was my best friend, and it came out of the blue. She was completely healthy, and then she was gone. And it was so all-consuming. It was like a fire that blazed through my life, and it just burnt everything to the ground. And I've always been optimistic. Like, I'd always been able to look on the bright side of things. I'd always been able to see silver linings, and that was just gone. That was like not available to me anymore. I've always been enthusiastic. I've always been able to look forward to things. Like, even if there's nothing else to look forward to, I'll look forward to lunch. Like, I really love food. And none of that worked. Like, there was nothing that provided any happiness. Happiness was out of reach. Enthusiasm was out of reach. Excitement was out of reach. And yet, even in those awful days, and they really were very dark days, I didn't know that I would recover from it. It felt like I would never return to who I had been before. There were still these tiny little moments, and they were so little that they would be easy to miss in the midst of an ordinary life. Like, if everything was going well, I wouldn't have noticed how lovely it is when my pot plant has a new leaf. But because I felt so deeply hopeless about everything, that made me feel better for a couple of seconds. And I wouldn't have noticed how lovely it was, like getting a hug from someone I loved, like how that fills you up, or watering the garden and there's a rainbow in the spray. It's these tiny little things that when you're buoyant and when you're feeling good, you don't really need them. But everything was so dark that these were the only chinks of light that I could find. So slices of joy is a term coined by Chade Meng Tan, who was Google's former happiness guru. And the idea is that instead of postponing happiness and joy until some future end date, until you get to go on holiday, or you get the promotion you've been working for, or you find the love of your life, or whatever it is, instead of postponing joy, you look for these thin slices of joy, these 3-second moments that are interspersed throughout your day, and they're interspersed throughout everyone's days. So slices of joy and glimmers to me are the same thing. They're the same concept, that no matter what else is going on in your life, there are still these small moments, and they're so small, and the bar for delight is so low that they can be easy to ignore. But if you actually pay attention to them, they can have quite a profound effect on your mental health. But it's not like a, oh my God, that changed my life effect. It's gentle and it's subtle, and it's almost like a repositioning of your attention. And then that helps you to slowly come out of darkness. Whereas happiness for me is like this whitewash, right? It's when everything's going away. Nobody's sick. Work isn't very stressful. There's something fun on the horizon, and then you feel happy. And that's just not available when you're in the dark days of grief. And so joy still is, because joy comes from inside. Happiness is dependent on outside factors. And so that's why I feel like they're the two faces of the same thing, is that you can be in them at the same time. They don't fix each other, but it's possible to hold both at the same time.
That's really profound.
I sadly have had a lot of experience. So someone I love died 3 weeks ago now, and I am back in it. And it's better second time around, because it feels like a sickness that I didn't know I would ever recover from the first time. And this time around, I know that it eases, and I also have tools. Like, this feels like a tool that is possible to use, but thank God it works, because I wrote a whole book about it. And imagine then I stress tested it with grief, and I was like, oh, this really doesn't work. But I have stress tested it and the concept is sound. Thank heaven.
For me, it's the mountain. Table Mountain is a daily sort of glimmer for me because I drop
Yeah.
off my kids and their school has got this perfect view of it. And what is interesting is I do think there's a bit of science to it as well. So my psychiatrist, when I get really depressed, he will always ask me, are you feeling the mountain? And that's kind of shorthand for him to gauge like whether I'm in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. And are you able to lift your eyes enough from the way you're feeling
Yeah.
to be able to see the things around you? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
I've got goosebumps. Scott has got his goosebumpy face as well.
That's why we do audio podcasts and not loads of video.
Yeah.
It is funny though, because I feel like I've snuck in the darker side of things a lot. I mean, the book itself is just beautiful, right? It's like a rainbow with sparkly gold stars on the cover. It couldn't be prettier. Yeah. And then anytime there's an interview, I want to talk about the dark stuff. And I think people are sometimes surprised by that, but it's really important to me that this, like the word glimmers is a little silly. And I love silliness and I love playfulness, but it's not only for people who are comfortable being silly and playful. Like, I think it's really important to highlight that it's a mental health coping mechanism, like when things are really hard and also when things are just blur. Because I feel like adulting is much crappier than we were sold when we were children. Like, my kids are like, it must be so great to have endless pocket money and go to bed whatever time you like. And I'm like, oh, but do you know about all this other stuff I have to do? I didn't sign up for this package. And I think it can be easy to just kind of blur it away. Like it just kind of rolls into one long beige to-do list. And it isn't actually. There is so much beauty as well. And I think it's really important that we notice that. Otherwise, we're wasting our time and who knows how long we've all got.
Yeah. Scott looks overwhelmed.
Yeah, because I do want us to do the happiness stuff, but I'm really keen to talk about the grief part because my dad died last year.
Sorry.
And
it's fresh.
in 2021, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so seeing that decline of him was hard enough. And you reach a point where you just almost go, that's
How much is
the man I knew is just not, it's not there anymore. And you could watch as the conversation, you'd be having a conversation with him and you would literally see, you'd be saying something to him and then you could see he was processing it and that would take a while.
Yeah.
And then you'd see that he was processing what to say. And then that would take a while.
Yeah.
And then he'd say it. And he played such a big part in my life, both as a friend and as a father. Particularly, and we would have really good conversations about my work. That's when we both came into our own in our relationship. Was around work. He loved talking about work. And I used to love phoning him when good things were happening, when like a big deal. I'd love phoning him and talking to him about it.
Yeah.
So in those last few years when things were going really, really well, not being able to have those conversations with him really, really hurt. And then he died last year. And 4 weeks later, my nan died and she was the matriarch of the family. And two things happened. Firstly, I've not in any way grieved for the loss of my nan. Which I think about it often. I just find it impossible to even really take in that she's gone because I'm finding it so hard about my dad dying. And that's the sort of other point is how hard I have found it. And what I find is that whenever we win a big deal or something really good happens and we're celebrating something, immediately my dad pops into my head because that's the first thing I do. I talk to my dad about it and I can't do that. So then that success, that celebration is tempered a little bit.
Yeah.
And I find that incredibly hard. The other thing is that on a Sunday morning when we're up and about as a family and we're doing bits and pieces, I like to put on music from my dad's era. So it'd be like the Rat Pack or Soul or something like that. And literally the kids can see it. If a Frank Sinatra song comes on, I'll just zone out a little bit and then I'll get quite emotional. And the kids now will just say to me, "Are you thinking about Papa?"
Oh.
And I am, and I find it incredibly hard to in any way deal with it.
And I think what's so interesting is that you're surprised by that. And I was surprised by it. I was floored by how hard grieving was. I don't know, because societally, we don't give any capacity for it. We give like, people are nice to you for a week or two, if you're lucky, and they like drop off food and flowers. And then you can be sad in public for 3 months. And then after that, there's just this expectation that you put on a happy face and you get on with it, because like it's quite uncomfortable. We're still talking about this.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly, so I write a lot on Instagram. I find it helpful for processing. And I've written a lot about grief. And 7 months after my mom died, I was in like a very hard grief stage. And because it's cyclical, right? And no one tells you that either. So you can be feeling awful, then you start feeling better, and then you're back at the beginning. But it's not easier being back at the beginning. You're back at the beginning and it's as awful as it was in the beginning. And then it lifts for a bit and then you're back again. And I wrote something about how I was in a hard grief stage, and like 2 or 3 of my not close friends, but like the next level of friends reached out and they were like, no, has something happened to your dad? And I was like, no, this is still my mom. I'm still grieving my mom. It's only been 7 months. Like, I'm not over it yet. But there is this societal expectation that we just move on and get over it. And I find grief so fascinating because I also thought before I'd been through it that it was just feelings and that it was like kind of a bad depression. And then you lift out of it. But it's so physical. It's headaches and stomach aches and deep fatigue and brain fog. And that combined with the emotions and lack of energy, it's exceptionally hard. And I think we need to talk about it more, because I don't think we give any leeway for people who are grieving to function less. And we should be giving months and months of just kindness and grace and holding space. The only thing I can say is that it does eventually get better, but it takes so long. And I think I don't think there's any easy way, right? So my mom died 13 days. The person I love who's just died had the same kind of cancer, weirdly esophageal cancer. And we found out at the end of January, and he died now. So it's been 9 months. And that was super hard to hold the tension of knowing that he was definitely going to die. And then like towards the end, waiting for him to die because he was getting so much sicker. My dad had a severe stroke. And so I completely understand the cognitive stuff that you're talking about. The person, you can almost get them, but it's like there's a delay, which in itself. So I feel like I've been grieving the dad I once had for a while. I think there's no easy route out. And I think you just got to be so kind to yourself, because there's no right or wrong way to do it. And however you're feeling is exactly right.
Yeah. I had a good friend pass away, and the Christmas before, she gave me a little box of these really, really offensive daily affirmation. And it's on my desk. And like every day I turn it over as you're supposed to. And it says, today is going to be a good fucking day. And one of my friends said she doesn't get that, because every morning it's like a little nod to what you've lost. But I think maybe that's also an example of a glimmer, right?
Yeah, totally.
They don't. Because for me, it's like keeping a bit of it, like a bit of our relationship alive. Because she says stuff like that to me all the time.
Yeah, and
so I don't
the
know,
same
Scott.
In music, Scott. Like it's it's tying your, like I make my mom's recipes. I sing the songs she used to sing. Like it's bringing them into daily life.
Yeah,
but it doesn't make it easier. I think it's just important.
But it does lead to really interesting questions from your children. My children asked me the other day, why do green beans make you cry?
Oh.
But I find it, I acknowledge it's a bit counterintuitive, but I find those kinds of reminders help me.
Yeah.
It helps me with that thing where friends don't want to talk about it anymore and people don't understand why you're still feeling sad about it. It helps me because it kind of honors, I don't know, I can't remember who wrote it, but it said about grief is if it didn't matter, it won't. So in other words, your grief is proportional to how much you love the person, and that is very meaningful.
Yeah.
I think you've explained so eloquently why you wrote it. What I really liked about it is that you do reference a little bit of sort of neuroscience behind it. You want to talk a bit about that and maybe what you were reading and what they found.
And what was so interesting is that I'd tested it myself, right? So I knew that it worked on me. And then when I wrote the book, the editors were like, but where's the science? Can you find the science? And then thankfully the science supported what I had found.
I also make stuff up and then I find stuff. And I do it in the podcast and I pretend like I knew this thing. And then afterwards I'm like, that was quite profound. Let's find out.
There must be a paper somewhere. What I found the most interesting, actually, so it didn't surprise me that So essentially, sometimes glimmers are described as the opposite of triggers. So triggers are something brief that exacerbate your nervous system and make you feel kind of panicky. And glimmers are the opposite in that they calm your nervous system, even if it's only for a couple of seconds. And I'm slightly obsessed with the nervous system. I find it fascinating. I think we're not paying enough attention to our nervous systems, and we're all wildly overstimulated, and we're constantly being advertised to, and we never get a break. And so I think this idea of a pause so that the nervous system can refuel, even if it's for a couple of seconds, is really useful. What I found the most interesting, though, was that joy and happiness have different effects on the nervous system. So joy activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calming, rest, digest nervous system. And happiness activates the sympathetic nervous system, which is the like excitable, enthusiastic nervous system. And I find that so interesting because that also correlates to how I feel about the different emotions. Like happiness is the jumpy up and down version, and joy is the calmer, more internal experience, I think. And it's releasing tiny, tiny doses of serotonin. So again, it's not like a quick fix. It's not, this is going to change your life overnight. That's not the intention. And it's specifically not the intention because I think there are so many books that change your life. I've had so many books that have changed my life. And then a couple months later, I can't really remember exactly what it was that changed my life, or like, I'm like, oh, that was such a good book. It made me look at the world differently, but how exactly? And so the intention with this is that you dip in, and it's the same thing as glimmers, right? They're not this one big dramatic change you have to make in your life. They're there all the time anyway. It's just a matter of noticing them. And when you notice them, your nervous system gets a little bit calm. You get a little microdose of serotonin, and it contributes a little bit to your mental health. And I think that's the goal. I can't be adding anything else to my to-do list. And so I didn't want to add anything else to anyone else's to-do list.
My favorite glimmer in the book was where you said the joy of finding the right word. Like for me, it's fixing a sentence. And it especially happens if I was stuck for a bit.
Yes.
So that was a wonderful example. Do you have favorites, or do you have ones that are sort of extra for you?
So it's so funny because when I think of this, so there's over 1,000 in the book, right? There's 366 days and then 2 alternatives for each day. And when I think of my favorites, I don't think of any of the fancy ones. I think of the ones that I do every day. So I think of like the first sip of tea in the morning, because that's here we go. I think of like putting my head on the pillow at night. I have the world's most comfortable bed. I love it so much. I'm obsessed with new leaves unfurling on pot plants. I make my children come and look at them every time. I'm like, guys, look at this. It's a total miracle. And they're like, yeah, I mean, it's nice. Hot shower. I return mostly to the basics. But then what's so lovely is because there's so many, I've kind of forgotten a lot of them. And so particularly so each month has a different theme. And particularly in the life experiences and the joy-inducing moments, I'll look back at them and be like, yes, this is so lovely. I really love this. And it can be things as minor as when there's a sticker on something and then you pull the sticker off and the whole sticker comes off in one go. Like,
yeah,
Great.
yeah. When you sharpen a pencil and you get that perfect curl, it's so good. There's like all these tiny moments that are legitimately too ridiculous to notice. But if you notice them, there's so many and they're so satisfying. And then when you share them with other people, they also get delighted, which I think is lovely. And there you go. We go sharpen some pencils over this. There is one more that I routinely chase as much as I can. And that's the smell of the calyx when you pull a tomato off the vine. You get those vine tomatoes from Woolies and as you pull the small tomato off, and then if you can smell both the tomato and the calyx, which is the green bit left behind. It's like heady. It's the most amazing smell. So that's one of
just a little bit of South African translation there. Woolies is a retailer in South Africa. They have the most fantastic produce.
Yes, they really do. I used to work.
I've been at one of their warehouses. They have this lock that the trucks back into. Their lettuce, for instance, does not leave the ideal temperature for more than like 5 minutes in the entire chain.
Okay.
And that's why they don't unload the trucks like outside. That was okay. So here's a glimmer. It was inside that warehouse, and there's the room where sort of the really cold stuff. I think it's called a fridge. The room where there's the really cold stuff. It snows in there. Like it's little, like it snows. I stayed there
In
for a
what
bit and then I got
context were
hypothermia.
you in the snowy fridge? What led you to the
Yes.
snowy fridge?
No, I was on a tour.
As you do? That doesn't
I was
make it any
waiting for them.
clearer. Okay. That
I
makes it
was
clearer.
like contractually bound not to disclose what I was doing. Anyway, Scott
There
has
we
got
go.
a face on that says, "How do we get here?"
Yeah, I know. It's because I interrupted you to talk about tomatoes.
No,
Love
no, no.
tomatoes.
I'm just thinking Legal Off The Leash, sponsored by Woolies. We should be sending them a preview of this episode
Yes.
and say, we'll keep all of this in. You
Yeah.
sponsor the
Yeah.
you sponsor the show or the
Yeah.
episode.
Talk
I
about
know
your
the head of
favorite
marketing.
stuff. There you go. It's a very niche audience they're trying to get into. Okay, Scott, you're allowed talking now. We'll
No,
pause.
it's okay. It's okay. We've got a certain amount of time in these episodes. What we'll do is we'll just dedicate the rest of this episode
To letters.
to a supermarket.
What's your favorite
What
letters?
amazes me is that they let me put things. I mean, you write a book and you hope that you can keep in the things you like, but some of the things they let me keep in, I'm kind of flabbergasted. Have you got to the recipe for magic salt yet?
Yes.
Magic is a game changer. And as I read it, I was like running low on glimmers that day. And I was like, I love me some magic salt. Magic salt, for your listeners who haven't experienced, is really wonderful. It's pink Himalayan salt, normal salty salt, not
Yeah.
crystals. And then you whiz it up with dried garlic and dried olives and dried rosemary. And it is transformative.
It's insane.
That on a tomato with some olive oil,
Fresh off the vine.
fresh
From
off the
Woolies.
vine, so you can sniff it. It's
That brings me
tremendous.
to my main question, right? Is
Oh,
how
yeah.
on earth did you think of 1,000 of them? I mean, you must be the most joyful person on the planet.
So what was interesting is I first wanted to call it 1001 Slices of Joy, and it was just a long list. Then my editor was like, do you think maybe you could write a paragraph instead of just a line for each of them? And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. I could do that. And then my agent suggested that I put it in the format of a thought a day, which I think is very useful. But there were so many duplicates in the beginning. So I had like, I was so smug. I had like 1,263, and I was like, I'm definitely going to have more than 1,001 here. And then I did find when you can like search within a document, and back scratches were in there 17 times, and T was in 27 times. So I had to delete a lot of things, which made me very sad. And then once you theme things, more start showing up. So it wasn't necessarily things I'd thought of initially, but then when you start feeling about like the way that the feeling of peeling off a sticker and the way that like sharpening a pencil, they feel similar, but they also feel similar to things that are completely unrelated, right? Like finishing a document that you've been working on for ages. It's that kind of like satisfying feeling. And so it was quite interesting then having to think sideways about things. So I had the main ones. So the main ones, there were only 366. So that was pretty easy to do. But then I had to think of 2 alternatives for each because some of them obviously won't align. And I wanted to offer, like for future years, there'd be fresh ones. And that was really interesting because that made me think about like how low can you possibly lower that bar for delight? And it's pretty low. There are things that can be very satisfying, literally just for 2 or 3 seconds. So it was a very fun gathering. It also took ages and ages, like over a year of gathering. And in the beginning, I did 3 a day. I tried to think of 3 a day, but that's what got me all the repetitive back scratches and cups of tea. My back hardly gets scratched too. So I think that's why anytime it happened, I was like, oh, I love a back scratch. Wish it happened more.
I think it's so true, isn't it, that we take all of these things for granted a little bit.
Yeah.
But we don't notice those really small. As you were talking about peeling off a sticker, it's for me, we found this liquid for those stickers that won't come off or leave stuff behind. There's this liquid that you can now get where you just put the liquid on it and then you can just like really gently scrape the residue off. And now, just when before you thought you'd lost, that the sticker had won because it hung on. Now you know you've been. And I was thinking about that as we were talking about the stickers. I was thinking, well, actually, that was huge.
Yeah.
It's a tiny little thing that you really, and you take all of these little things for granted. I got up this morning, I was early, so I sat and I just had a cup of tea on my own, and it was a lovely moment. I've almost kind of taken those things for granted. I know that some days I wake up really, really early.
Yeah.
That also, by the way, tends to be when I get messages from Elizabeth. Like 5 in the morning. If I
She's
wake
really
up.
That is the ultimate glimmer. I am a glimmer.
It's true. Messages from a buddy, like if you're not expecting it,
Yeah.
or if it's funny, like a funny meme, a message from a
Yeah.
friend you were just thinking about, like so that to me is what I like about this practice, is that it doesn't cost anything, doesn't add anything to your to-do list. They're already there. They're there all the time. All you have to do is notice them. And you don't have to notice them and do anything. So I have a friend who's very into behavioral science, and he was saying the other day, don't you need to share them? Isn't like the sharing of them or the writing them down like part of the practice? And that's almost the level up, because the basic practice is literally just pause and be like, I'm drinking a cup of tea by myself and it's quiet and this is a beautiful moment. And then a couple seconds later, it's gone and that's fine. But you noticed it. And so it feels like the easiest mindfulness practice because you're not adding anything. You're literally just looking. And that's what I hope the book helps with, is that so many people wake up and read the news first thing, or are on social media first thing, or reading messages from their very loved friends from across the world first thing. And in a lot of cases, particularly if it's the news, you're just handing your attention to someone else and being like, oh, hey, I don't know what my day is going to be like. You tell me. And then you start the day with a particular filter on, and the rest of the day often unfolds in that way. And so I think if we can train ourselves to start the day with a slightly more lighthearted, more whimsical view on the world by like reading a paragraph while you have your morning coffee, you're more likely to look at things in a slightly warmer way because you're priming your attention in a different direction. And I think that's not hard to do, but can be really impactful. Maybe hard to start the habit. Starting habits is tricky.
Yeah. I think we've become so dependent on these things, haven't we? Like social media and the news. So I listened to a podcast episode with Mo Gaudat a few years ago, and he was talking about his happiness philosophy, and that had a massively profound impact on me. After listening to this, I stopped watching the news and immediately felt so much better. And you realize just how much of an impact it has on your entire day. And he said something really interesting, which was, it's not like he completely is out of the loop. Every so often, every 4-6 weeks, he'll go back and he'll have a quick look at what's going on in the world. But his view is if he can't do something about it, then all it's doing is having this really horrible negative impact on him, because there's these things going on in the world that he can impact nothing at all about. And the knowledge of it, there's nothing he can do with it. So now it's just impacting the rest of his day and the way that he thinks and the way that he reacts to things and the way he treats other people.
Yeah.
And so what he does is he checks in every 4 to 6 weeks. And so he's not capturing the massively hyperbolic headlines. He's not capturing the social media hooks that are designed to capture your attention, take your attention away from somewhere else, and put you in this very often negative headspace. And he just says, no, what he does is every 4 to 6 weeks, he'll just check back in, catch up on the news. If there's something he can do about it, brilliant. If there isn't, he moves on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't consume. And we, as feels like a society now, are consumed by so much negativity because we surround ourselves.
And our attention is just grabbed from us all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky because my husband is not I'm highly sensitive. He's not highly sensitive. He can read the news and go straight to sleep. I would if I were to read the articles he reads before going to sleep, I would just be lying there tormented by it. But you still know what's going on, right? So then every so often I'll be like, tell me what the situation is. I'm hearing in the ether there is a situation, and then he'll explain it to me. But I think it's really important that we are conscious about where our attention goes. It's hard when we have phones attached to us all the time. It's hard to do that because you pick up your phone and you're being bombarded with things that are trying to steal your attention. And so I think taking a small step back and being a little more intentional about it is very useful.
I think, and I'm not religious, so I want to preface what I'm about to say with that. Even though you're not religious, you can find a lot of wisdom in it. I think it was Desmond Tutu who said, when you pray, you are speaking to God. When you meditate, God speaks back. And I think that's relevant what you're talking about, because I think noticing things, and that in your bio, you reference nature, where I think it's doubly true. But when you notice things, you also become grateful for it almost automatically. And that is incredibly good for your central nervous system.
Yeah. And I mean, nature.
I read the Book of Joy every morning. That's
That's
kind of my
lovely.
Bible. But it is also just, it's quiet. It's like meditation, but I don't have to like actually go and, sit cross-legged in the garden or something. It's not my vibe. It's that trying to create a gap for you to notice
Yeah.
things. And if you dive straight into social media, as you say, that robs you of that ability to have a gap
Yeah.
between, because it just sucks you in.
And then what's so interesting is that I think so often that if we were to follow the experiences of the day, often you'll have 2 days that are actually fairly similar, but if your perspective is different, you interpret them completely differently, right? So you go pick up coffee and you're in a good mood and the barista gives you a big smile and a chit chat and it takes a couple of extra minutes, but you're like, oh, this is so great. Like, love this guy, love this coffee. This is so awesome. Then the next day you're not in a good mood and you're in a rush and he wants the chit chat and you're just like, oh my God, could we hurry up? I have things to do. I need to get out of here. And it's the same circumstance, but depending on your outlook for the day, it feels completely different. And that just goes further in every single circle, right? It's like the stone dropped in the concentric circles throughout the whole day. And so whatever we can do first thing in the morning to pull ourselves towards ourselves and make sure that we're starting with an open outlook rather than a stressed, worried outlook.
I regain that after the kids are at school, but I get to regain it with the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. That's your reward.
Yeah. Bye. Devil Mountain. Actually, I find dropping them off is also a
There's
glimmer.
Elizabeth Glimmer. There's Elizabeth Glimmer. Bye.
If so, you
Scott,
might
so
want to
we do-
edit that bit out.
God, shall we do 4 questions?
Yeah, why not? It's all part of the game, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's when we give direct advice. As you know, most of our audience are lawyers. And I think
Yes.
set the context by saying lawyers are a notoriously unhappy bunch. And on the more serious side, there is also a bit of an epidemic of mental health issues. So if you were speaking to lawyers, what advice would you give them just starting out in the profession? How can they prime themselves for work?
Yeah. So I obviously am not a lawyer and have had very few real corporate jobs. So take all my advice with a pinch of salt. But I think anyone starting out in any career is to not take yourself too seriously. I think it can be very tempting, particularly when you're younger and wanting to prove yourself, to think that you have to be like very serious and formal all the time. And I really don't think that is necessary. I think it's really important to remain human and enjoy as much of the process as you can, particularly because by the time you're a lawyer, you've been studying for so long. So you have, even if you're starting out as a junior, you're at a point that you've been waiting for a long time, and to not postpone joy until you reach the next point, because I know there is kind of a hierarchical ladder. So try not to take yourself too seriously and try not to postpone joy until you need to reach the next rung of the ladder.
It's a great response. So the next question, what's the one thing about the legal profession? And again, you can widen this out to anywhere, but it's more about how people work. But what's the one thing that you would want to change, and how do you think that could happen?
I would say the thing that's probably hardest to change as a lawyer, because of the billable hours situation, is that you want to remember to be a human and take lunch breaks and take nature breaks and like walk around and not just be tethered to your desk. And the reason it's harder is because you know how much your hours are worth. I don't know how much my hours are worth. I'm running a diabetes nonprofit. Like I could work it out by dividing my salary by the number of hours that I work, but I don't have a number in my mind. And I think it's harder when you have a number in your mind to be like, I'm worth taking an hour to go and sit in the sunshine and eat a sandwich. And we're taking 20 minutes to go sit in the sunshine and eat a sandwich. And it's not only lawyers. Like I was at an event the other day and I said, what could you do this week to try and put more glimmers into your life? And one of the women said, take lunch. And I was like, whoa, that's like, this is the world we're living in, that you have to like make a concerted effort to take a break from staring at your screen or being in meetings to go and take lunch. But we are actually humans. Easy to forget when we're plugged in all the time. But I think if you can take a break to be able to notice that there is a sky and there is sunshine and there is a tree somewhere nearby, there's always a tree somewhere nearby, and go and like sit next to it and take a pause, even if you have to start with like 10 minutes and then work up to an hour. But I think that would make an impact, because then you return refreshed, you return more human, you return more able to interact with people.
I'm going to cut in before Scott does, right? So you saw a big reaction when you
I did.
mentioned the billable hour. Every single episode.
It's
Scott
because
does
it's in your brief. You talk
Scott-
about billable hours in your brief. I was like, I'm going to work them in.
We
No
need,
matter
we need
how.
to change that because,
Change the brief.
like, you can count down now.
I was just about to say, please, could you tell people that I did not prompt you on that one?
That
And
was
then you've gone and said,
unprompted.
You
it's
had
in your brief.
strong feelings about billable hours. And I was like, oh, I like strong feelings. I want to see what these strong feelings are. I'm going to throw in those keywords
He's now going to give, on average, a 6-minute TED talk.
that people can
On-
just listen to the last one.
There
I'm
has
gonna-
not.
I'm going to preempt him a little by saying there's this book. I think there's always this book, but I think it's so true what you're talking about. Like, lawyers commoditize themselves.
Yeah. I think that must be
So-
really hard to know how much
horrible.
your time is worth and for other people to be charging your time as if you are a product. I think it makes it much harder to be kind of free and easy with your time, right? Because there is an actual number attached to it. Whereas when you don't know how much your time is worth, I can be like, oh, I really want to go drink my tea outside. I don't know how long it'll take me. That doesn't really matter. And I think that's harder, especially because you've been trained into that. It's years and years of training to get to this point. And then you want your time to be worth a lot, but then you have to give some of it back to yourself. Super easy to say from outside the profession, as I know it all, because I'm not in the profession.
But you are right. Now, Elizabeth's right. If there is a way that I can work the billable hour into every single episode, I will work it in. But that said, I was feeling really good about the fact that we hadn't mentioned it because I was thinking, oh, this is amazing. We're going to have one episode
Progress.
where it doesn't come up. And then when you mentioned it, I was thinking the way to salvage this is that at least I can say I didn't in any way prompt you. And then
Yeah.
you've gone and said, it's in your brief.
In the brief.
And your really strong things. But yes, but I think the point is to not make this so much about my hatred for it. It is the fact that ultimately taking breaks does refresh you. And you mentioned that.
Yeah.
And when you combine it with these tiny little glimmers, these moments of joy, that makes it even better. And you come back and you're feeling refreshed, but now you're noticing those moments of joy as well. You come back feeling really positive, which is going to have a big impact on your work because you can just keep working through, but we're not robots
No.
and we run out of our own fuel
Yeah.
if we just keep going and going and going and going. But you take those
It's
breaks.
really hard to stop yourself. I think that's what I find so interesting. Have you seen those brain scans of the brain after 1 meeting, 2 meetings, 3 meetings, 4 meetings?
Yeah.
Like, I find that so fascinating. There are parts of your brain that are literally shutting down when you go from meeting to meeting to meeting. But when you get into that like drudgy zone, when it's like late afternoon, you're not actually doing anything worthwhile with your time. You're just pushing through. And if you step away, when you come back, you'll be more productive. You'll be able to finish quicker. You'll be more pleasant to be around. You're not going to have a headache and sore eyes when you finish the day.
Yeah.
But it's so funny that you have to remind yourself to do that. I think we've stepped away from being human to such an extent that we do need to remind ourselves about that.
Absolutely. Well done, Scott. Shortest TED talk you've done. No, I am really proud.
It was more about the joy than the
Yes, it was.
slapping off the billable hour. Okay, so to swiftly move away from
You've
it.
just caused the glimmer for me by not. I'm going to be basking in the glory of this glimmer all day. So proud of you.
Right, so final question. What would it...
Yeah, it's the second last question, dude.
Is it the second last question?
Another glimmer.
Hold on. Are we on the second
Common
to last
myth.
question?
Common myth.
All right, that's you then, isn't it? Because you did the first one. Okay.
Yeah. So
See,
is there...
perfect, isn't it, Bridget? A classic example of exactly where we will be cutting
You
because we
mustn't.
can't make
Wondering.
it through an entire episode without fucking something up.
The intro,
Right.
though, the intro was beautiful.
Thank you. What is a common myth about the legal profession or, any part of corporate life that you feel needs to be debunked?
I mean, can I answer with a very similar to question 2, in that I think we believe that people can be automatons and just work constantly. And I think we need to remember that we are all humans at the end of the day, and we're all looking for something more than just drudge. Like, I think it's so easy to fall into the rut of just pushing on in a drudgy way. And it's so important to step out of that and recognize that everyone deserves a life that's full of the beautiful ordinary, even if the beautiful ordinary is teeny tiny little things throughout the day.
I was watching a video not so long ago, and they were talking about how in this AI future, where so much of what we're going to see is going to be AI, And it's going to become harder to kind of tell the difference between the two. Pulling back and being human again and having those human interactions are probably going to be a lot more of the future than we are quite fearful of right now. We're all sitting there thinking, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job to AI, and this is going to be, the future is going to be, actually probably what's going to happen is that the future will be, AI will be there, and AI will do that sort of drudge. And what will really count to everyone are those human to human interactions. And that will be what's really important. What you should be really focused on is those things, finding those moments, finding those ways to make what we do so much more human, because it's what drives human beings. We are social beings, and most of us don't want to just have a relationship with computers or with AI. Don't know if you've seen that film Her, which is like one of the most amazing films. But I think most of us don't want it to be like that. Most of us actually do want to have those interactions. And I'm really, really upbeat about it and optimistic about all this, because I think, what's going to happen is that AI is going to allow us to have so much more human interaction, because it's going to take away from us all those things that stop us from doing that right now.
As long as we spend the extra time wisely and don't spend it on Facebook. Because I think that's the risk, right? Is that we get more time, we get relieved from these drudgy tasks, and then we just end up scrolling. And so I think it is important to consciously insert more humanity into our days.
Okay, final question. What would it look like if you could design the ideal career path?
I think the ideal career path would look completely different for every person. I think the main thing that I would really like to remove is the pressure to have done certain things by a certain age. I think when you are in your 20s, it feels really urgent to achieve. Speaking from my own experience, it feels really urgent to achieve things as quickly as possible. And now that I'm in my 40s, I know so much more, and there's still a lot of time. So I think the career path should involve a little more meandering and like kind of a societal exhale. We don't have to force 17-year-olds to know exactly what they want to do with the rest of their lives. And if we could just give some space for people to go on really unusual career paths, because anyone I know who's doing a job that they love now in their 40s, their path has been anything but linear. Like, you ask how they got into it, and they have done some very wackadoodle things to get to where they got to. And yet we still are counseling kids who are finishing school that they should do a degree that leads straight to a job. And so if we can understand that, like, everyone's life, what everyone wants out of their life is very different, and their career path can look unique without that being a failing.
Brilliant. I agree with you. I meandered a lot. I'm still meandering. Scott decided that eventually my book needs to be called Still Finding My Feet. I think, talking about books. So where can people find Daily Glimmers? If we happen to have some diabetics in the audience, where can they find you?
You can find Daily Glimmers anywhere books are sold. So it was published in the UK and the States before it was published in South Africa. It's available everywhere. I would really recommend getting a print copy because it's so beautiful. It's like
it's very pretty
hardcover, sparkly thing, and it's it's illustrated by Lauren Fowler, who's my favorite Cape Town illustrator, and it's beautiful on purpose to encourage you to keep it on your desk or next to your bed so that you dip into it often. I read many books on Kindle, but I don't think this is a Kindle book. So anywhere books are sold, as always, choose a small bookstore rather than an online megalith if you can. You can find out more about me on bridgetmcnulty.com. Sweet Life is on sweetlife.org.za, and on Facebook we're South Africans with Diabetes. I believe that Facebook is evil as a rule. However, it is an extraordinary unifier in South Africa in that people come from every different background, like every different socioeconomic background, racial background, type of diabetes. Like, it is a great equalizer, which I find really fascinating. So something good has come out of it. So South Africans with Diabetes on Facebook, and I'm Bridget McNulty pretty much everywhere. I'm Ms. Bridget McNulty on Instagram because rude, someone stole Bridget McNulty. I want to message her and be like, who even are you? Is this even your name? Give me my name back. I had a Ms. And I was like, not ideal.
Scotty, take us out. No.
Right. Oh, I'm doing it.
Yes, because I can't remember what I'm supposed to say.
Dear God, this is how it goes. I prepare every episode. The few that she actually prepares for doesn't actually prepared for.
Streak. I've prepared for the last two.
Does 2 count as a streak?
Yeah.
Thank you, Bridget. Does 2 really count as a streak?
It's a pair. It's en route to a streak.
Yeah, right. Okay, I'll take us out then. So a really, really big thank you to Bridget McNulty for joining us on this episode and talking us through Daily Glimmers and also about grief, which has been really, really profound to me. So thank you hugely for that. We've been your hosts, Scott Simmons and Elizabeth de Stadler, and this has been Legal Off the Leash.